When Sarah and Daniel first noticed Amara, a quiet little girl who seemed to appear everywhere they went, they thought she was just another curious child. Amara was only 5 years old, always watching from a distance, hiding in the shadows, her eyes speaking of secrets no child should hold. Even the people around the neighborhood had no clue about her family or where she had come from. But what Sarah and Daniel didn't know was that behind those silent, pleading eyes lay a heartbreaking mystery waiting to be uncovered. And when Amara finally revealed the reason she'd been following them, it wasn't just Sarah and Daniel who were left stunned. It was the start of a journey that would turn their world upside down. As the truth about Amara's past begins to unfold, Sarah and Daniel find themselves on a mission to uncover answers and protect a little girl who's been through more than they could have ever imagined. Before we dive into this gripping story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're ready to join us on this emotional journey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The sun peeked through the curtains of the Matthews' cozy suburban home, casting a warm glow across the kitchen. Officer Daniel Matthews, a tall man with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair, adjusted his police uniform as he sipped his morning coffee. His wife, Sarah, bustled around the kitchen, preparing breakfast with a practiced ease. "Another day of keeping Oakwood safe, honey?" Sarah asked, sliding a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of her husband. Daniel nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Always. This town might be small, but there's never a dull moment." Sarah leaned against the counter, her auburn hair tied back in a neat ponytail. "Speaking of which, I've got a busy day at the shelter. We're organizing a food drive for the homeless." "That's my Sarah," Daniel said proudly. "Always thinking of others. This town's lucky to have you." Sarah blushed slightly, waving off the compliment. "Oh, stop it. I'll just do what anyone would do." As Daniel finished his breakfast, he stood up and kissed Sarah on the cheek. "I'll be home for dinner. Stay safe out there." "You too, Officer Matthews," Sarah replied with a wink. Daniel left for work, and Sarah began her day. She started by heading to the local grocery store, pushing her cart down the aisles as she picked up supplies for the shelter. As she examined a can of beans, she felt a peculiar sensation, as if someone was watching her. She glanced around, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Shrugging it off, Sarah continued her shopping. However, the feeling persisted. As she waited in line at the checkout, she casually scanned the store. That's when she saw her, a young black girl, no more than 8 years old, partially hidden behind a display of snacks. The girl's big brown eyes were fixed on Sarah, a mixture of curiosity and something else Sarah couldn't quite place. Sarah offered a friendly smile, but the girl quickly ducked out of sight. By the time Sarah had paid for her groceries and looked again, the child was gone. Later that afternoon, Sarah made her way to the community center. As she approached the building, she caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of her eye. There, peeking around the corner of the building, was the same little girl from the grocery store. Sarah's brow furrowed in confusion. "Hello there," she called out gently, but the girl disappeared once again. Inside the community center, Sarah busied herself with organizing donations and chatting with volunteers. Yet, she couldn't shake the image of the little girl from her mind. As the day wound down, Sarah decided to take a walk through the park near her home. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the path. She breathed in the fresh air, trying to clear her head. That's when she saw her again. The little girl was sitting on a bench, her legs swinging back and forth as she watched Sarah approach. This time, Sarah was determined to speak with her. "Hi there," Sarah said, keeping her voice soft and friendly. "I've seen you around today. Is everything okay?" The girl's eyes widened, and for a moment, Sarah thought she might run away again. Instead, the child simply stared at her, silent and unmoving. "My name's Sarah. What's yours?" Sarah tried again. The girl opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. She slid off the bench and backed away slowly, never taking her eyes off Sarah. "Wait!" Sarah called, but it was too late. The girl turned and ran, disappearing into the trees. Confused and slightly unsettled, Sarah made her way home. As she approached her house, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was still being watched. She glanced over her shoulder and caught a fleeting glimpse of a small figure ducking behind a neighbor's fence. Inside, Sarah found Daniel already home, heating up leftovers in the microwave. "Hey, sweetheart," he greeted her with a warm smile. "How was your day?" Sarah hesitated, unsure of how to explain the strange encounter she'd had. "It was interesting," she said finally, settling into a chair at the kitchen table. Daniel's brow furrowed as he sat down across from her. "Interesting how?" Sarah took a deep breath. "There's this little girl, Daniel. I've seen her everywhere today. At the grocery store, the community center, even here in our neighborhood." "A little girl?" Daniel asked, his police instincts kicking in. "What do you mean? You've seen her everywhere." "She's been watching me," Sarah explained, feeling slightly foolish as she said it out loud. "She's young, maybe 7, 8 years old, with these big, expressive eyes. Every time I try to talk to her, she runs away." Daniel leaned back in his chair, considering this information. "That is strange. Did she seem lost or in trouble?" Sarah shook her head. "I don't think so. She didn't look dirty or neglected. She just kept watching me. Following me almost." Daniel mused, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Well, it's probably nothing to worry about. Maybe she's new to the neighborhood and just curious about people." "Maybe," Sarah agreed, though she didn't feel entirely convinced. "It's just the way she looked at me, Daniel. It was like she wanted to tell me something, but couldn't." Daniel reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's hand reassuringly. "Tell you what, I'll keep an eye out for her while I'm on patrol. If there's anything to be concerned about, we'll figure it out." Sarah nodded, feeling slightly better. "Thanks, honey. I'm probably just overreacting." "Hey, your instincts are usually spot on," Daniel said with a smile. "If something feels off to you, it's worth paying attention to. But for now, try not to worry too much, okay?" As they finished their dinner and settled in for the evening, Sarah tried to push thoughts of the mysterious little girl out of her mind. But as she gazed out the window at the darkening street, she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, a pair of big brown eyes were still watching her. That night, as Sarah lay in bed next to a softly snoring Daniel, her mind wandered back to the events of the day. She replayed each encounter with the little girl, trying to make sense of it all. There was something about the child's eyes that tugged at Sarah's heart, a look of longing, perhaps, or a silent plea for help. Sarah turned onto her side, staring at the alarm clock on her bedside table. The red numbers glowed 2:37 a.m. With a sigh, she slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Daniel, and padded downstairs to the kitchen. As she waited for the kettle to boil for a cup of chamomile tea, Sarah found herself drawn to the window. The street outside was quiet and still, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. For a moment, she thought she saw a small shadow move across the sidewalk, but when she blinked, it was gone. "Get a grip, Sarah," she muttered to herself, shaking her head. "You're letting your imagination run wild." The next morning dawned bright and clear, but Sarah Matthews awoke with a sense of unease that she couldn't shake. As she went about her morning routine, she found herself constantly glancing out the windows, half expecting to see the mysterious little girl watching her from across the street. Daniel noticed his wife's distraction as they sat down for breakfast. Still thinking about her, he asked gently, reaching across the table to squeeze Sarah's hand. Sarah nodded, absently stirring her coffee. "I can't help it, Daniel. There's something about her. I just can't get her out of my mind." "I understand," Daniel said, his brow furrowing with concern. "I'll keep my eyes open today while I'm on patrol. Maybe I'll spot her and be able to talk to her." Sarah managed a small smile. "Thanks, honey. I just hope she's okay." As Daniel left for work, Sarah steeled herself for the day ahead. She had errands to run and volunteer work at the community center, and she was determined not to let her worries about the little girl distract her. But as Sarah walked down the sidewalk towards the local grocery store, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced over her shoulder, and there she was, the little girl, partially hidden behind a tree, her big brown eyes fixed on Sarah. This time, Sarah decided to approach her directly. She turned and walked towards a tree, calling out softly, "Hello there." "It's okay, I won't hurt you." But as she got closer, the girl's eyes widened in alarm, and she darted away, disappearing down an alley between two houses. Sarah sighed, frustration mingling with concern. She continued on to the grocery store, but throughout her shopping trip, she kept catching glimpses of the girl. Sometimes it was just a flash of movement in her peripheral vision, other times a small face peeking around a corner or from behind a display. By the time Sarah left the store, laden with bags, she felt on edge. The girl's presence seemed more deliberate now, less like chance encounters and more like intentional following. As Sarah walked home, she heard the soft patter of footsteps behind her. She turned quickly, just in time to see the girl duck behind a parked car. "Please," Sarah called out, her voice tinged with a mix of concern and frustration. "I want to help you. Can we talk?" But there was no response, just the rustle of movement as the girl slipped away once again. At home, Sarah paced the living room, her mind whirling. When Daniel returned from his shift, he found her sitting on the couch, staring out the window with a troubled expression. "Sarah?" he asked, sitting down next to her. "What happened?" Sarah turned to him, her eyes filled with worry. "She was everywhere today, Daniel. Following me, watching me. It's like she's trying to tell me something, but she's afraid to approach me directly." Daniel's expression grew serious. "That does sound concerning. Did you get a better look at her? Any distinguishing features that might help us identify her?" Sarah shook her head. "Not really. She's always too far away or disappears too quickly. But Daniel, I'm really starting to worry. What if she's in some kind of trouble?" Daniel pulled his wife into a comforting embrace. "I'll look into it, Sarah. I promise. Tomorrow, I'll start asking around discreetly. Someone in this town must know who she is." The next day, true to his word, Daniel began his investigation. He started at the local elementary school, showing a rough sketch of the girl based on Sarah's description to the principal and teachers. "I'm sorry, Officer Matthews," the principal said, shaking her head. "I don't recognize her, and we haven't had any new students matching that description enroll recently." Daniel's next stop was the neighborhood where Sarah had most frequently spotted the girl. He went door to door, asking residents if they'd seen her or knew of any new families with a young daughter. But each conversation ended the same way, with apologetic head shakes and no useful information. It was as if the girl had appeared out of thin air, visible only to Sarah. As Daniel drove back to the station, his mind worked overtime. Who was this child? Where did she come from? And why was she so fixated on Sarah? Meanwhile, Sarah's day had been no less eventful. As she volunteered at the animal shelter, she kept seeing flashes of the girl outside the windows. At one point, she even thought she heard a small voice call out Sarah, but when she rushed outside to look, there was no one there. Linda, her fellow volunteer, noticed Sarah's distraction. "Still no luck with your mystery girl?" she asked sympathetically. Sarah shook her head. "No, and it's really starting to worry me, Linda. I feel like I'm going crazy, seeing her everywhere." Linda patted her friend's arm. "You're not crazy, Sarah. Your instincts have always been good. If you feel like something's not right with this child, then there probably is something going on." Sarah managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Linda. I just wish I knew how to help her." As Sarah left the shelter that afternoon, she decided to take a detour through the local park. The sun was shining, and she hoped the peaceful surroundings might help clear her head. She found a bench near the playground and sat down, watching as children laughed and played on the swings and slides. For a moment, she allowed herself to relax, letting the cheerful sounds wash over her. But then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw a familiar small figure standing at the edge of the playground. Sarah's heart began to race as she realized the little girl was looking directly at her, making no attempt to hide this time. Slowly, so as not to startle her, Sarah stood up and began walking towards the girl. To her surprise, the child didn't run away. Instead, she took a few hesitant steps forward, her eyes never leaving Sarah's face. As they drew closer to each other, Sarah could see the girl more clearly than ever before. She was small for her age, with delicate features and those striking brown eyes that seemed too old for her young face. Her clothes were clean, but slightly too big for her, as if they had been hastily acquired. Finally, they stood face to face, barely an arm's length apart. Sarah's heart was pounding, but she tried to keep her voice calm and gentle as she spoke. "Hello," she said softly. "I'm Sarah. What's your name?" The girl's lips parted slightly, and for a moment, Sarah thought she might finally speak. But instead, The child simply stared up at her with an expression of such intense longing and silent pleading that it nearly broke Sarah's heart. Sarah knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with the girl. "It's okay," she said soothingly. "You can talk to me. I want to help you." The girl took a small step closer, her hand twitching as if she wanted to reach out but was holding herself back. Her eyes filled with tears, and Sarah felt an overwhelming urge to pull the child into her arms and comfort her. But before Sarah could say or do anything more, a loud noise from the playground startled them both. The girl's head whipped around, her body tensing as if ready to flee. "Wait!" Sarah called out, but it was too late. In the blink of an eye, the girl had turned and run, disappearing into the trees at the edge of the park. Sarah stood there, her arm outstretched, feeling a mix of frustration and deep concern. This close encounter had only intensified her worries about the mysterious child. As she walked home, her mind raced with questions. Why wouldn't the girl speak to her? What was she so afraid of? And why did she look at Sarah with such desperation? When she arrived home, Sarah found Daniel waiting for her, his expression serious. "Any luck?" she asked hopefully as she hung up her coat. Daniel shook his head. "Nothing concrete. No one in the neighborhood recognizes her, and she's not enrolled in any of the local schools. It's like she doesn't exist." Sarah sank onto the couch, running her hands through her hair. "I saw her again today, Daniel. In the park. We were so close." She recounted the encounter to her husband, watching as his frown deepened with each detail. "This is getting strange, Sarah," Daniel said when she had finished. "I think it might be time to file an official report. We need to find out who this girl is and why she's following you." Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. "You're right. I can't shake the feeling that she needs help, Daniel. The way she looked at me today, it was like she was silently begging me to understand something." Daniel sat down next to his wife, putting an arm around her shoulders. "We'll figure this out, Sarah. I promise. Tomorrow, I'll talk to my captain about opening an official investigation. Maybe with more resources, we can get to the bottom of this mystery." As they sat there in the growing twilight, both lost in thought, neither of them noticed the small shadow that flitted past their living room window, pausing for just a moment before disappearing into the gathering darkness. The next morning, Sarah woke early, her dreams having been filled with images of the little girl's pleading eyes. She made her way downstairs, surprised to find Daniel already up and dressed in his uniform. Heading in early, she asked, pouring herself a cup of coffee. Daniel nodded, his expression serious. "Yeah, I want to catch the captain before the morning briefing. I'm going to push for that investigation we talked about." Sarah felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. "Thank you, Daniel. I know this must seem crazy, but—" "Hey," Daniel interrupted gently, pulling her into a hug. "I trust your instincts, Sarah. If you think this girl needs help, then we're going to do everything we can to find her and make sure she's okay." As Daniel left for work, Sarah tried to go about her morning routine, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She found herself constantly glancing out the windows, half expecting to see the little girl standing on the sidewalk. Later that morning, as Sarah walked to the community center for her volunteer shift, she felt the now familiar sensation of eyes on her back. She turned slowly, unsurprised to see the girl trailing behind her at a distance. This time, instead of approaching or calling out, Sarah simply continued walking, occasionally glancing back to make sure the girl was still there. It was almost as if they were engaged in a silent dance, the distance between them never changing as they made their way through the quiet streets. When Sarah reached the community center, she paused at the entrance, looking back at the girl who had stopped at the corner. Their eyes met across the distance, and Sarah felt a surge of determination. Somehow, she would find a way to help this child. Inside the center, Sarah tried to focus on her tasks, but her mind kept wandering to the little girl. Was she still outside, waiting? Why didn't she come in where it was warm and safe? "Sarah?" Linda's voice broke through her reverie. "Are you okay? You seem a million miles away." Sarah sighed, turning to her friend. "I'm sorry, Linda. It's just, I saw her again this morning. The little girl." Linda's eyes widened with concern. "Did you talk to her this time?" Sarah shook her head. "No, she was too far away. but she followed me all the way here. I think she might still be outside." Linda moved to the window, peering out onto the street. "I don't see anyone," she said after a moment. Sarah joined her, scanning the area. Sure enough, there was no sign of the girl. "She must have left," Sarah murmured, trying to ignore the pang of disappointment in her chest. As the day wore on, Sarah found herself growing increasingly anxious. The girl's appearances had become so frequent, so deliberate, that her absence now felt somehow wrong. By the time her shift ended, Sarah was wound tight with tension. She said a hasty goodbye to Linda and hurried outside, her eyes darting around the street, searching for any sign of the mysterious child. But the sidewalks were empty save for a few passers-by going about their evening routines. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and disappointment as she began the walk home. She was about halfway there when she heard it, the soft patter of small feet behind her. Sarah's heart began to race as she slowly turned around. There, standing in the middle of the sidewalk, was the little girl. She was closer than she'd ever been before. Close enough that Sarah could see the faint freckles across her nose and the way her hands trembled slightly at her sides. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Sarah was afraid to move, afraid to speak, lest she scare the child away again. But this time, it was the girl who took a hesitant step forward. Sarah knelt down slowly, bringing herself to eye level with the child. "Hello," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Sarah. What's your name?" The girl's lips parted, and Sarah held her breath, hoping that this time, finally, she would speak. But instead of words, a small, choked sob escaped the child's throat. Before Sarah could react, the girl closed the distance between them in 2 quick steps and threw her arms around Sarah's neck, burying her face in her shoulder. Stunned, Sarah instinctively wrapped her arms around the small, trembling body. She could feel the girl's tears soaking through her shirt, could hear the muffled sobs that the child seemed to be trying desperately to hold back. "It's okay," Sarah murmured, gently stroking the girl's hair. "You're safe. It's okay." For several minutes, they stayed like that, the girl clinging to Sarah as if she were a lifeline. Sarah's mind was whirling with questions, but she pushed them aside, focusing on comforting the clearly distressed child. Gradually, the girl's sobs subsided, and she loosened her grip on Sarah. As she pulled back slightly, Sarah got her first clear, close-up look at the child's face. What she saw made her heart clench. The girl's eyes were red-rimmed from crying, but it was the expression in them that truly struck Sarah, a mix of fear, hope, and a desperate kind of pleading that seemed far too intense for such a young face. "Can you tell me your name?" Sarah asked gently, keeping her hands on the girl's shoulders to maintain a connection. The child opened her mouth as if to speak, but then her eyes widened in sudden fear. She glanced over Sarah's shoulder, and before Sarah could react, the girl had wrenched herself free and was running down the street at full speed. Sarah stood up quickly, ready to chase after her, but stopped short when she realized what had spooked the child. A police cruiser was turning onto the street, its lights off but still clearly recognizable. As the car drew closer, Sarah recognized her husband behind the wheel. Daniel pulled up alongside her, his expression a mix of concern and confusion. "Sarah, what's going on? I saw you kneeling on the sidewalk." Sarah quickly explained what had just happened, watching as Daniel's face grew increasingly serious. "We need to find her, Daniel," Sarah said urgently. "She's scared and alone, and she needs help." I could see it in her eyes. Daniel nodded, already reaching for his radio. "I'll put out an alert. We'll find her, Sarah. I promise." As Daniel called in the description and last known location of the girl, Sarah stared down the street where the child had disappeared. The brief encounter had left her shaken, but more determined than ever to unravel the mystery surrounding this silent, desperate little girl. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that this was only the beginning. The truth behind the girl's appearances, and the reason for her fixation on Sarah, was far more complex and heart-rending than she could have imagined. And as the search for the mysterious child began in earnest, Sarah and Daniel were about to be drawn into a web of secrets, loss, and unexpected connections that would change their lives forever. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. It had been days since her last encounter with the mysterious little girl, and the lack of progress in finding her was taking its toll. She felt a deep, inexplicable connection to the child, a protective instinct that grew stronger with each passing day. Daniel entered the room, his face etched with concern. "Sarah, honey, you need to get some rest," he said gently, sitting beside her. Sarah shook her head, her voice tight with emotion. "I can't, Daniel. Every time I close my eyes, I see her face. Those eyes, they were so full of fear and hope. How can I sleep when she's out there, alone and scared?" Daniel wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "I know it's hard, but we're doing everything we can. The whole department is on alert." Sarah leaned into him, drawing comfort from his presence. "I just don't understand. Why me? Why is she so focused on me? I wish I had answers for you." Daniel sighed. "But Sarah, I'm getting worried. We don't know anything about this girl, or why she's following you. What if it's not as innocent as it seems?" Sarah pulled away, her eyes flashing. "No, Daniel. You didn't see her. She's not a threat. She's a scared little girl who needs help." Daniel held up his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm not saying she's dangerous. I'm just saying we need to be careful. We don't know the whole story." Sarah stood up, pacing the room. "I know that, but I also know what I feel. There's a reason she chose me, Daniel. I can't explain it, but I know it in my heart." Daniel watched his wife, torn between his instinct to protect her and his trust in her judgment. "Okay, Sarah, I believe you. We'll keep looking and we'll figure this out together." Sarah nodded, managing a small smile. "Thank you. I need to know she's safe." As the days passed, Sarah's emotional conflict deepened. She found herself scanning every street corner, every playground, hoping for a glimpse of the little girl. The protective feelings she harbored were at war with her frustration at the child's continued silence and elusiveness. One evening, as Sarah was preparing dinner, she heard Daniel's excited voice from the living room. "Sarah, come quick." She rushed in to find Daniel staring intently at his laptop screen. "What is it?" she asked, her heart racing. Daniel looked up, his eyes wide. "I think I might have found something. I've been going through old case files, and there's one from about 8 years ago that caught my attention." Sarah leaned in, her eyes scanning the screen. "A missing persons case?" Daniel nodded. "A woman disappeared under mysterious circumstances. She had a baby with her at the time. The case went cold, but Sarah, look at this photo." He pulled up an image, and Sarah gasped. The woman in the picture could have been her sister. The resemblance was striking. That's not me," Sarah stammered, though the similarity was uncanny. "No, it's not," Daniel agreed. "But it might explain why our little mystery girl is so fixated on you. If she's connected to this case somehow." Sarah's mind was reeling. "You think she might be that baby? All grown up?" Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "It's just a theory, but it would explain a lot. The age fits, and if she's been looking for her mother..." Sarah sank onto the couch, overwhelmed by the implications. "Oh, Daniel, if that's true, then she must be so confused and scared. She probably thinks I'm her mother," Daniel finished softly. They sat in stunned silence for a moment, the pieces of the puzzle slowly falling into place. Suddenly, their quiet contemplation was interrupted by a soft thud from the front porch. Sarah was on her feet in an instant, rushing to the door with Daniel close behind. She threw it open, her heart pounding. The porch was empty, but there on the welcome mat lay a small, worn photograph. With trembling hands, Sarah picked it up. The image showed a woman holding a baby, her smile radiant as she gazed down at the infant in her arms. The woman was unmistakably the same one from the case file, and her resemblance to Sarah was even more pronounced in this personal snapshot. "Daniel," Sarah whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "She was here. She left this for us." Daniel examined the photo closely, his police instincts kicking in. "This could be crucial evidence, Sarah. We need to dash." But Sarah was already moving, scanning the street frantically. "She can't have gone far. We have to find her, Daniel. Now that we know." Daniel gently grasped her arm. "Sarah, wait. We need to do this right. Let me call it in. We'll organize a proper search." Sarah wanted to argue, to run out into the night and search every corner until she found the little girl. But she knew Daniel was right. They needed help. As Daniel made the call, Sarah studied the photograph, her heart aching for the child who had left it. "We're going to find you," she whispered to the empty night. "I promise." The next few hours were a flurry of activity. Police cars arrived, a command center was set up, and search parties were organized. Sarah insisted on joining one of the teams, unable to sit idle while others looked for the girl she now felt so deeply connected to. As they combed the neighborhoods, Sarah's mind raced with questions. Who was this woman in the photo? What had happened to her? And how had her daughter ended up alone, silently seeking out Sarah? It was well past midnight when Sarah's radio crackled to life. "All units, we have a possible sighting near Oakwood Park. Proceed with caution." Sarah's heart leapt. Oakwood Park, where she had first clearly seen the girl. She and Daniel exchanged a look before hurrying towards their car. As they approached the park, they could see flashlight beams sweeping the area. Sarah's eyes strained in the darkness, searching for any sign of movement. Suddenly, she saw it, a small figure darting between the trees. "There!" she cried, pointing. Daniel quickly radioed the other officers, directing them to form a loose perimeter. "We don't want to scare her," he cautioned. "Sarah, I think you should approach her alone. She trusts you." Sarah nodded, her throat tight with anticipation and nerves. Slowly, she made her way into the wooded area, her flashlight beam sweeping gently across the ground. "Hello," she called softly. "It's okay. I'm here to help. We found your picture." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, from behind a large oak tree, a small voice finally spoke. Are you my mommy?" The words, so quietly spoken, hit Sarah like a physical blow. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before responding. "No, sweetheart, I'm not your mommy, but I want to help you find her. Can you come out so we can talk?" There was a rustle of movement, and then the little girl stepped into view. In the beam of the flashlight, Sarah could see tears glistening on her cheeks. "My name is Sarah," she said gently, kneeling down to the girl's level. "What's your name?" The child hesitated for a moment before whispering, "Amara." "Amara," Sarah repeated, smiling warmly. "That's a beautiful name. Amara, I know you've been looking for your mommy. We want to help you, but we need you to tell us everything you know. Can you do that?" Amara nodded slowly, her small body trembling slightly. Sarah longed to wrap her in a hug, to protect her from whatever fears and hardships she had endured. But she knew she needed to be careful, to let Amara set the pace. "I ran away," Amara said, her voice barely audible. "From my foster home. They were nice, but they weren't my real family. I wanted to find my mommy." Sarah's heart ached at the pain in the child's voice. "How did you know to look for me, Amara?" Amara reached in her pocket and pulled out a crumpled photograph, a copy of the one she had left on Sarah's porch. "I found this in my old stuff. You look just like her. I thought maybe—" Sarah gently took the photo, studying it closely. "I can see why you thought that, sweetie. We do look very similar, but I'm not your mommy. I wish I could tell you where she is, but I don't know. What I do know is that there are a lot of people who want to help you find her." Amara's lower lip trembled. "You promise? You'll help me find her?" Sarah nodded solemnly. "I promise, Amara. We'll do everything we can. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe and warm. Is that okay?" After a moment's hesitation, Amara nodded. Sarah stood slowly, holding out her hand. Amara looked at it for a long moment before slipping her small hand into Sarah's. As they walked out of the woods together, Sarah could see the relief on Daniel's face. He approached slowly, smiling warmly at Amara. "Hi there," he said gently. "I'm Daniel, Sarah's husband. We're going to take good care of you. Okay?" Amara nodded, pressing closer to Sarah's side. As they made their way to the waiting ambulance for a precautionary checkup, Sarah couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and apprehension. They had found Amara, yes, but the mystery surrounding her mother's disappearance was far from solved. Back at the station, Daniel immersed himself in the old case files, determined to uncover any lead that might help them locate Amara's mother. Sarah stayed with Amara, who had been cleared by the paramedics but was understandably exhausted and overwhelmed. As Amara dozed on a couch in the break room, wrapped in a soft blanket, Sarah watched over her, her mind whirling with questions and theories. She was so lost in thought that she barely noticed when Daniel entered the room, his face grave. "Sarah," he said softly, gesturing for her to join him in the hallway. "I've found something. It's not good." Sarah's heart sank at his tone. "What is it, Daniel?" He ran a hand through his hair, a habit she recognized as a sign of stress. "I've been going through the old case files. Amara's mother, Lydia Thompson, didn't just disappear. There were suspicions of foul play." Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "You mean?" Daniel nodded grimly. The initial investigation turned up some troubling evidence. Lydia had been trying to leave an abusive relationship. Her boyfriend at the time was the prime suspect, but there wasn't enough evidence to charge him. The case went cold. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. "Oh, Daniel. Poor Amara. What are we going to tell her?" "For now, nothing," Daniel said firmly. "We need to be absolutely sure before we say anything. I've reopened the case officially. We're going to find out exactly what happened to Lydia Thompson." Sarah nodded, her resolve strengthening. "And what about Amara? She can't go back into the system, Daniel." "Not now." Daniel hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I've been thinking about that. What if we applied to be her temporary guardians? Just until we sort this all out?" Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. "Us? Daniel, are you sure?" He shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. "Well, she clearly trusts you, and we have the space. It just feels right somehow." Sarah felt a warmth spreading through her chest. She had always known Daniel would make a wonderful father, and now, seeing his compassion for this lost little girl, she loved him more than ever. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's do it. But, Daniel, what if we can't find her mother? What if—" Daniel pulled her into a hug, his voice gentle but firm. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, let's focus on giving Amara a safe place to stay and finding out what really happened to Lydia." As they re-entered the break room, Amara stirred, her big brown eyes blinking open. She looked around in confusion for a moment before her gaze settled on Sarah. "You're still here," she said, her voice filled with wonder and relief. Sarah sat down beside her, smiling warmly. "Of course I am, sweetie. I promised I'd help you, remember? And I always keep my promises." Amara nodded solemnly, then asked the question that Sarah had been dreading. "Did you find my mommy?" Sarah exchanged a quick glance with Daniel before answering carefully. "Not yet, Amara, but we're looking very hard. It might take some time, though. In the meantime, how would you feel about staying with Daniel and me?" Amara's eyes widened. "Really? I can stay with you?" Sarah nodded, her heart melting at the hope in the child's voice. "Really? If that's okay with you, of course." Amara launched herself into Sarah's arms, hugging her tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. As Sarah held the little girl, she made a silent vow. Whatever it took, however long it took, she would uncover the truth about what had happened to Lydia Thompson. She owed it to Amara, to give her the answer she so desperately sought. But for now, in this moment, all that mattered was that Amara was safe, and that she was no longer alone in her search for the truth. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah and Daniel worked tirelessly to make their home welcoming for Amara, setting up a cozy bedroom and filling it with books and toys. Amara, for her part, seemed to be slowly coming out of her shell, offering shy smiles and even the occasional giggle. One evening, as Sarah tucked Amara into bed, the little girl looked up at her with those big, soulful eyes. "Sarah," she asked hesitantly. "Yes, sweetie?" Amara fidgeted with the edge of her blanket. Do you think my mommy is looking for me too?" Sarah's heart clenched at the question. She sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "I'm sure that if your mommy could, she would be moving heaven and earth to find you, Amara. Sometimes grown-ups have problems that keep them from being with their children, even when they want to be, but that doesn't mean they don't love them." Amara nodded slowly, seeming to ponder this. "I dream about her sometimes," she whispered, "but I can never see her face clearly. Just a feeling, like being wrapped in a warm hug." Sarah blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the child's innocent longing. Those are precious memories, Amara. Hold on to them, and know that no matter what, you are loved. Daniel and we care about you very much. Amara's small hand found Sarah's, squeezing it tightly. I know, she said softly. Thank you. As Sarah left Amara's room, gently closing the door behind her, she found Daniel waiting in the hallway. His expression was grave. We need to talk, he said quietly, leading her to their bedroom. Once inside, Daniel sat heavily on the bed, running a hand through his hair. I've been digging deeper into Lydia's case, he began, and I've uncovered some disturbing information. Sarah sat beside him, her heart racing. What kind of information? Daniel took a deep breath. It seems Lydia was involved with some dangerous people before she disappeared. There were rumors of connections to organized crime, though nothing was ever proven. Sarah gasped. Oh my God, Daniel. Do you think that's why she vanished? He nodded grimly. It's looking more and more likely. But there's more. I found records of large cash deposits into Lydia's bank account in the months leading up to her disappearance. Way more money than she should have had, given her job as a waitress. Sarah's mind was reeling. What does this mean for Amara? Daniel's expression softened as he took Sarah's hand. It means we need to be very careful. If the people Lydia was involved with are still out there, they might see Amara as a threat. A loose end. Fear gripped Sarah's heart. We can't let anything happen to her, Daniel. We have to protect her. We will, Daniel assured her. I've already increased patrols in our neighborhood, and I'm working on getting us some additional security measures for the house. But Sarah, we need to consider the possibility that we might be Amara's best chance at a normal life. Sarah understood what he was implying. If Lydia couldn't be found, or if the danger was too great. You mean adoption? Daniel nodded slowly. It's just a possibility we need to consider. For now, let's focus on keeping her safe and continuing the investigation. Sarah agreed, though her mind was whirling with the implications of everything they'd learned. As they prepared for bed, she couldn't help but think of Amara, sleeping peacefully down the hall, blissfully unaware of the complicated web surrounding her mother's disappearance. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new rhythm for the Matthews household. Amara began attending the local elementary school, where she slowly started to make friends. Sarah and Daniel worked tirelessly to create a sense of normalcy for the little girl, all while continuing their investigation behind the scenes. One sunny Saturday afternoon, as Sarah was helping Amara plant flowers in the backyard, the little girl suddenly spoke up. Sarah, she asked, her small hands covered in dirt. Yes, sweetie? Sarah replied, looking up from the flower bed. Amara hesitated for a moment before continuing. If we can't find my mommy, can I stay with you and Daniel forever? Sarah's heart swelled with emotion. She set down her trowel and gently pulled Amara into a hug, not caring about the dirt. Oh, Amara, we would love nothing more than for you to stay with us. But we're not giving up on finding your mommy, okay? Amara nodded against Sarah's shoulder. I know. I feel safe here. With you and Daniel. Sarah blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the trust this little girl had placed in them. We'll always keep you safe, Amara, no matter what happens. That evening, after Amara had gone to bed, Sarah and Daniel sat at the kitchen table, discussing the case. I think I'm onto something, Daniel said, his voice low and urgent. I've been tracing the money that was deposited into Lydia's account. It led me to a shell company, and from there to a name, Victor Rossi. Sarah's eyes widened. Who is he? Daniel's expression was grim. A low-level crime boss. He's been on our radar for years, but we've never been able to pin anything on him. If Lydia was involved with him, then she could have been in real danger, Sarah finished, her heart sinking. Daniel nodded. Exactly. But here's the thing. Rossi dropped off the grid around the same time Lydia disappeared. It's like they both vanished into thin air. Sarah leaned forward, her mind racing. Do you think they could have run away together? It's possible, Daniel admitted. But if that's the case, why leave Amara behind? And why hasn't Lydia tried to contact her daughter in all these years? They sat in silence for a moment, both pondering the implications of this new information. Finally, Sarah spoke up. What's our next move? Daniel ran a hand through his hair. I've got a contact in the FBI who owes me a favor. I'm going to see if he can dig up any information on Rossi's whereabouts. If we can find him, we might be able to find Lydia." The next few days were tense as they waited for news. Sarah threw herself into caring for Amara, trying to push away the nagging worry that they might be putting the little girl in danger by pursuing this investigation. It was a Wednesday afternoon when everything changed. Sarah was at home with Amara, helping her with homework, when Daniel burst through the front door, his face pale. "We need to go," he said urgently. "Now, pack a bag for Amara. We're not safe here." Sarah's heart raced as she quickly gathered some clothes and necessities for Amara, who watched with wide, frightened eyes. "What's happening?" Sarah asked as they hurried to the car. Daniel's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as he pulled out of the driveway. "My FBI contact came through. He found Rossi, or what's left of him. He's dead, Sarah. Has been for years. But the information he uncovered, it's big, really big, and dangerous." Sarah instinctively reached back to hold Amara's hand. "What kind of information?" Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror, making sure they weren't being followed. Rossi wasn't just some small-time criminal. He was working with corrupt officials, politicians, the kind of people who would do anything to keep their secrets buried. Sarah gasped. "And Lydia?" Daniel's expression was grim. "I think she found out something she shouldn't have. Something big enough to make her run and hide. But I don't think she's dead, Sarah. I think she's in witness protection." The implications of this hit Sarah like a ton of bricks. If Lydia was in witness protection, that meant she was alive. But it also meant she had been forced to leave Amara behind to keep her safe. They drove for hours, finally stopping at a small, out-of-the-way motel. As Daniel checked them in under false names, Sarah tried to comfort a confused and frightened Amara. "It's going to be okay, sweetie," she soothed, stroking the little girl's hair. "We're just going on a little adventure, that's all." That night, as Amara slept fitfully in the motel bed, Sarah and Daniel spoke in hushed tones. "What do we do now?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. Daniel took her hand, his eyes filled with determination. "We find Lydia. My contact gave me a lead, a small town in Oregon where several people in witness protection have been relocated. It's a long shot, but it's all we've got." Sarah nodded, her resolve strengthening. "Then that's where we'll go. For Amara's sake, we have to try." The journey to Oregon was tense, filled with long stretches of silence punctuated by Amara's innocent questions about their adventure. Sarah and Daniel did their best to keep her spirits up, playing card games and telling stories to pass the time. As they neared their destination, a small town called Pinewood, Sarah couldn't help but feel a mix of hope and trepidation. What if Lydia wasn't here? Or worse, what if she was, but didn't want to be found? They checked into a small bed and breakfast on the outskirts of town, Daniel using his police contacts to discreetly gather information. Days passed, each one bringing a new lead or a dead end. It was on their 5th day in Pinewood that everything changed. Sarah was walking with Amara in the town park when she noticed a woman sitting on a bench, reading a book. There was something familiar about her profile, something that made Sarah's heart race. As they drew closer, the woman looked up, and Sarah felt the world stop spinning. It was like looking in a mirror. The same eyes, the same nose, the same curve of the lips. This was Lydia Thompson, there was no doubt about it. For a moment, they just stared at each other, both too shocked to speak. Then Amara, who had been distracted by a butterfly, turned and saw the woman on the bench. Time seemed to stand still as recognition dawned in the little girl's eyes. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder and disbelief. Lydia's book fell from her hands as she stood, her eyes filling with tears. "Amara," she breathed, taking a hesitant step forward. In an instant, Amara was running, flinging herself into her mother's arms. Lydia caught her, holding her close as they both sobbed, years of separation and longing pouring out in a flood of emotion. Sarah watched, her own eyes brimming with tears as mother and daughter reunited. She felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see Daniel, who had been following at a distance. His eyes were moist as he watched the scene before them. "You did it," Sarah whispered, leaning into him. "You found her?" Daniel squeezed her shoulder. "We found her. Together." As Lydia and Amara's tears subsided, Lydia looked up at Sarah and Daniel, her expression a mix of gratitude and fear. "How did you find me?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Daniel stepped forward, his hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "It's a long story, Mrs. Thompson, but I promise, we're here to help. We've been taking care of Amara, keeping her safe." Lydia's arms tightened around her daughter. "Safe? Then you know why I had to leave?" Sarah nodded gently. "We know enough, and we want to help you both stay safe." Over the next few hours, as they talked in the privacy of Lydia's small apartment, the full story came out. Lydia had been a waitress at a restaurant frequented by Victor Rossi and his associates. She had overheard conversations, seen things she shouldn't have. When she realized the depth of corruption she had stumbled upon, she knew her life was in danger. "I wanted to take Amara with me," Lydia said, her voice breaking. "But they told me it was too dangerous, that the best way to keep her safe was to leave her behind. It was the hardest thing I've ever done." Amara, who had been listening quietly, hugged her mother tightly. "I knew you didn't leave because you didn't want me," she said softly. Lydia kissed the top of her daughter's head. "Never, my love. Not for a single moment." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room, Daniel cleared his throat. "Mrs. Thompson, Lydia, I think it's time we discuss your options. The information you have, it could bring down some very powerful people. But it would also mean you and Amara could come out of hiding." Lydia looked down at her daughter, then back at Daniel and Sarah. "What do you think I should do?" Sarah spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. "I think you should do whatever keeps you and Amara together and safe. If that means testifying, then we'll support you every step of the way." Daniel nodded in agreement. "We can arrange for protection. Make sure you're both safe during the trial and after." Lydia was quiet for a moment, considering. Then she looked at Amara, who gazed back at her with trust and love. "Okay," she said finally. "Let's do it. It's time to stop running and start living." The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Lydia's testimony, combined with the evidence Daniel had uncovered, led to the arrests of several high-ranking officials and the exposure of a vast network of corruption. Throughout it all, Sarah and Daniel stood by Lydia and Amara, providing support and protection. As the dust settled and the trials came to an end, Lydia and Amara were finally free to start their new life together. But as they prepared to move to a new city, Sarah found herself struggling with the idea of saying goodbye to the little girl who had become such an important part of her life. The night before Lydia and Amara were set to leave, Sarah sat on the edge of Amara's bed, helping her pack the last of her things. "Are you excited about your new home?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice cheerful. Amara nodded, but then looked up at Sarah with those big, soulful eyes. "I'm going to miss you and Daniel," she said softly. Sarah felt her heart clench. "Oh, sweetie, we're going to miss you too. So much." Amara was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Can I still call you sometimes? And maybe visit?" Sarah pulled the little girl into a tight hug. "Of course you can. Anytime you want. You'll always have a home with us, Amara." As Sarah left Amara's room, she found Daniel waiting in the hallway. He pulled her into a comforting embrace as she let out a shaky breath. "It's going to be okay," he murmured into her hair. Sarah nodded against his chest. "I know. It's just, I didn't expect to love her so much." Daniel pulled back slightly, looking into Sarah's eyes. I've been thinking, maybe it's time we started a family of our own." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with love. "Really? You mean it?" Daniel nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Seeing you with Amara, it made me realize how amazing you are with kids, and how much I want that for us." Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mix of love for Daniel and hope for their future. "I'd like that," she said softly. "I'd like that very much." The next morning, as they said their goodbyes to Lydia and Amara, there were tears and hugs all around. But there was also a sense of hope, of new beginnings. As Lydia's car pulled away, Amara waving from the back window, Sarah felt Daniel's arm wrap around her waist. "You okay?" he asked gently. Sarah nodded, wiping away a stray tear. "Yeah, I am. It's not really goodbye, is it? It's more like, see you later." Daniel smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. Exactly. And who knows? Maybe the next time we see them, we'll have a little one of our own to introduce. Sarah laughed, her heart light with love and possibility. I like the sound of that. As they walked back into their house, Sarah paused in the doorway, looking back at the quiet street. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the mystery, the danger, the love that had grown in unexpected places. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. They had reunited a family, brought justice to those who deserved it, and in the process had discovered a new dream for their own future. Sarah smiled to herself as she closed the door. This wasn't an ending, she realized. It was just the beginning of a whole new adventure. 5 years later, the Matthews backyard was filled with laughter and the excited shrieks of children playing. Balloons and streamers decorated the fence, and a banner reading, "Happy Birthday, Lily," hung from the porch. Sarah watched from the kitchen window as Daniel chased their 3-year-old daughter, Lily, around the yard, both of them giggling uncontrollably. Her hand rested on her swollen belly, feeling the kicks of the baby boy who would be joining their family in just a few months. The doorbell rang, and Sarah's face lit up with excitement. She hurried to answer it, throwing the door open to reveal Lydia and Amara, now a beautiful and confident 13-year-old. "You made it," Sarah exclaimed, pulling them both into a hug. Amara grinned, her braces glinting in the sunlight. "We wouldn't miss Lily's birthday for anything." As they made their way to the backyard, Sarah marveled at how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. Lydia and Amara visited often, their bonds with the Matthews family growing stronger with each passing year. Daniel looked up as they entered the yard, his face breaking into a wide smile. "Hey, look who's here," he called to Lily, who immediately ran over to hug Amara, her honorary big sister. As the party got into full swing, with friends and neighbors arriving to celebrate, Sarah found herself standing next to Lydia, both of them watching their children play. "Thank you," Lydia said softly, her eyes never leaving Amara. "For everything. For giving her a family when I couldn't. For bringing us back together." Sarah squeezed Lydia's hand. "We're all family now," she said simply. And as she looked around at the happy faces surrounding her, Daniel, Lily, Amara, Lydia, and all the friends who had supported them through their journey, Sarah knew it was true. They had started as strangers, brought together by a mystery and a little girl's silent plea for help. But they had ended up as something much more, a family bound not by blood, but by love, trust, and the unbreakable bonds forged through adversity. As the summer sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the backyard filled with laughter and joy, Sarah knew that no matter what challenges the future might hold, they would face them together. For in each other, they had found not just a happy ending, but a beautiful new beginning. Sarah and Daniel's decision to stand by Amara and seek justice for the truth behind her silent pleas didn't just give her safety. It gave her hope and a chance to heal. Their unwavering love and determination helped Amara find her voice and transformed her life in ways they never imagined. It's a powerful reminder that compassion and persistence can uncover hidden truths and spark real change. What would you have done if you were in Sarah or Daniel's place? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on more inspiring and emotional journeys like this one.